Hey, it's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. If I'm live, if the audio is going through, great. Welcome. I can't hear myself yet. I don't have any audio or video feedback yet, but I've done this a number of times before, and it usually takes a minute. So, as soon as I get an audio signal and know that my voice is coming through, we'll proceed with this video. Okay, I can hear my own voice. Cool. Sweet. It's going through. If you're having audio problems, because the last time I did one of these live Q&As, I spoke for about 3 hours. And at the very end, somebody said, yeah, the volume's a little bit low. So if the volume's a little bit low, we can turn it up. Please let me know now, not 2 hours from now, if we need to make volume adjustments. Because I know some of you are listening on devices that don't have good amplifiers. A lot of you can turn it up to whatever you want. Lieto says the volume is good. Denver Outdoorman says my voice sounds better. Yeah, the last few videos I made, I was going through like COVID part 4 or something like that. So the volume's great. Awesome. Because if 2 hours from now, somebody says, hey, the volume was a little bit on the quiet end, then I'll be upset about that. We have a super chat already from Joe Anderson. He says, good afternoon from the USA. Coach, the volume is good. Thank you, Joe Anderson. Much appreciated. I would like to start this video by reading a question that I got 12 hours ago from Johnny Appleseed, 2277. It's a multifaceted question, so let's dig into this. Johnny Appleseed says, let me ask you something, Ramsey. Can you fight with a broken nose? I have. I have done that, and worse. While you choke on your own blood. Now, you don't actually choke on your own blood when you've got broken sinuses, such as a nasal sinus or a frontal sinus. The blood goes down your throat. Like, you're not actually going to aspirate. It goes down your throat into your stomach. And then, since you're not able to digest the blood, you will end up vomiting that blood later. So, for example, when I broke my frontal sinus here, I almost bled to death internally and vomited that out. It was a lot, like a lot of blood. So, can I fight while having broken facial structures and while bleeding on the inside? Yes. You absolutely can. I can, anyway. I have. He goes on to say, the best move you could ever use is the palm strike to the nose. Ha! Okay, I was unaware that the palm strike to the nose was the best move ever, but now you know the palm strike to the nose is the best move ever, according to Johnny Appleseed. Enough said. There we go. He said, enough said, therefore it must be the best. That is what is known as the blackout. Ah, the palm strike to the nose. He has given it a name, the blackout. There we go. Now, when I first read this question, I thought he was, trying to be funny. I thought it was comedy. Maybe it is. Maybe this is... We'll continue, though. Let's see where he's going. Now, if you ever had any technique known or named by any way in which it is effective with a name like the blackout, you have to understand that you don't need fight training to be effective. That is also news to me, that you don't need fight training to be effective, as long as you have, hiya, the blackout, palm strike to the nose. That's why you come here, because I'm learning as I go. I don't just share my own experiences with you. I learn things. So we're learning about the blackout technique here. Every day, Johnny Appleseed says he practices this for a few minutes each day, and it's a technique that most people don't see coming. Well, when people literally go into fight mode and they are trying to attack you, they are literally walking in distance of your striking hand. So in this guy's experience, when he does the palm strike, people walk into it. Interesting. That hasn't been my personal experience, but everybody's different, which is perfect for the palm strike. You want to try that sometime when you're training, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. We'll have to try this blackout technique. Folks at home, let me know if your sparring partners walk right in to your palm strike, end up getting broken noses, and choke on their own blood. Let me know how that goes in your sparring classes. I've had previous years of training in martial arts. The techniques in which I speak of are battle-proven and battle-tested. I wonder which battles he's been in. All that ninjutsu and all that BS goes right out the window when you kick somebody in their nuts or elbow them in those, etc. What is your opinion on these types of techniques? Well, it sounds like our friend has certainly formed an opinion on these types of moves. Look, if you can land a strike, it's a legitimate strike. If you're out of position to land one, not so much. But then there's more to this question. Oh, we just got a super chat from Thanks Guy who sends in a tip. Hey, thanks, man. No question there. Just a dancing little creature emoji. Sweet. But we're going to persist with this question because, again, it's long. And maybe you're sick of listening to it. But there's more. It starts getting interesting. So what is my opinion on these types of techniques? Do you think they could work on somebody in a street fight? Well, if you hit somebody and you connect and they walk right into your palm strike, then okay. It's going to work to hit them. But what will that do? Because these moves, they won't even let you do in the UFC. There it is. There it is. Palm strikes to the nose are clearly illegal in the UFC. No, they're not. They're not. Why is that? Why are palm strikes illegal in the UFC? Is it because it's too lethal and can end a fight within seconds? Because that's the answer. You know why. It's a way in which you can end up fighting. You can end a fight in seconds. And they really don't allow those kinds of moves, which they already started to break the rules and bend the rules a little. That doesn't change anything. I was told that the reason that they don't allow these moves in the cage is because it can end the fight in seconds, and there's no way they can get the crowd excited, and there's no way to get money and leverage a fight. And this question goes on for like 16 more pages. It's amazing. But I just wanted to share that with you because it gave me a nice little chuckle. I got a few of those every day, somebody telling me something like, I know a move that is banned in the UFC, and then they'll like explain like a pretty normal thing, like punching somebody in the nose. Yeah, a palm strike to the nose in the context of a cage fight will not actually do as much damage as a punch to the nose when your hand is gloved up, taped up. You've got extra reach, extra density, etc. This is going to do more damage in a cage fight when your hand is all gloved up and taped than this in most scenarios. And guess what? Both of those are legal in the UFC. Man. Oh, man. There are a lot of, how can I put this, like entry-level MMA type of shows, like Combat Jiu-Jitsu, the old Pancrase organization that only allowed palm strikes because they felt that closed fists were too dangerous. So anyway, if you didn't know, now you know. All right, we got a super chat question from Joe Anderson who says, I heard Mike Tyson's boxing style isn't suited for tall people. Would you agree with this? Also, who you got, Mike or Jake? Look, Mike Tyson had a very similar fighting style to a number of other boxers of various heights. Take, for example, Jack Dempsey, whom Mike Tyson idolized. Jack Dempsey was about my height. I'm 6'1", or 185 centimeters tall, so not short by any stretch of the imagination. It's really basic, rudimentary boxing. Even though Mike Tyson was not super tall in the heavyweight division. How tall is he? Like 5'10"? I'm not really sure. Let's look that up. How tall is Mike Tyson? Some of you probably have that fact memorized. Mike Tyson height. 5'10" according to the internet, so... But then again, you never can really trust the internet as far as heights go. If you look up my height on the internet, it'll tell you I'm like 5'10", and that is not actually true. So I just met Met my friend Vaughn Anderson for the first time in person. We've been corresponding for years online via messages and so on. He's one of the pioneers of mixed martial arts here in China. We recorded a podcast yesterday. I'll be uploading that soon. Really interesting stuff. And one of the first things he said to me was essentially, "You're a lot bigger than I thought," because again, our experience knowing each other was purely online. And so he read 5'10", 145 pounds. Reality, I'm 6'1" and like 230 pounds, something like that. So yeah, people are quite shocked most of the time. However, I did meet a YouTube fan. Doesn't happen very often, but he came to my gym, and he was quite a tall fellow, and he looked at me and said, "You're not as big as I thought." Probably because we have this discussion, because so many people get confused the other way around. Anyway, back to the Joe Anderson's question about Mike Tyson. So what Mike Tyson does is some really basic things, and he does them really well, and basics are suitable for everybody. Bobbing and weaving, pivoting and punching, man. It's not some secret sauce that is only going to work if you are a specific height. Now, the way you are going to box, the way you are going to judge distance, etc., is going to change substantially depending on your reach relative to your opponent's reach. It's not just how big and tall or short and squat you are. It is your reach relative to your opponent's reach that is going to make a huge difference in the sport of boxing specifically, more so than other combat sports. So you have to keep that in mind. So if you are, say, 5'10" and your opponent is 7 feet tall with a 8-foot wingspan, your strategy is going to be way different than fighting someone who is your size and your reach, obviously. So who else fought like Mike Tyson? Rocky Marciano. Rocky Marciano had a very similar fighting style. I know a lot of people don't think that, but again, these fighters, Jack Dempsey, Rocky Marciano, Mike Tyson, offensive forward stance, most of their weight on the lead foot, bobbing and weaving, coming in from the angles with the shovel hooks and the uppercuts. And they did a lot of really comparable things, and they built off of each other. And the things they were doing are things I think every boxer should learn. Will every boxer be as good as Mike Tyson or Jack Dempsey or Rocky Marciano? No, obviously not. But if you learn from those guys, you will improve, sure. At the same time, you bring up a really important point here. When studying a fighter that you like, it is important to ask, is that working is it working for him because he's some sort of athletic freak, or because he's got some genetic abnormality such as long femurs or whatever that allow him to get away with this thing that normal people wouldn't? Okay, you've got to take those things into consideration. So this is a good question. It's a very good question. Also, who you got, Mike or Jake? So they're going to fight. I don't know how this is going to play out. We have not seen Mike fight in a long time, and he is considerably older. He is, how old is he? Going on pushing 60. Not quite there yet, but man, I don't know, man. I don't like this fight. I don't think anybody really likes this fight, but we're tolerating it. We're tolerating it because it's been set up, and we are morbidly curious about how it's going to play out. So, dude, I really don't know. I really don't know. I cannot make any intelligent predictions about this fight because we are missing so many of the variables. All right. Let's take a look at some of these other questions. Okay, something weird was going on with the questions, like every question was highlighted for a minute. Okay. Hello, Ramsey. How about Wing Chun versus Muay Thai? Like the pros and cons of Wing Chun and Muay Thai? Okay. So, my experience with Wing Chun is fairly limited, and by fairly limited, I mean I have trained with a number of Wing Chun practitioners. I've got a number of friends who are Wing Chun instructors. I have taken some Wing Chun classes. I'm not ignorant of the art and what it is and so on, but again, I'm not an expert in Wing Chun. I've observed a lot of it, and you're going to have a radically different experience from one Wing Chun class to another. Now, what most of the training I have observed in Wing Chun focuses on is the hand fighting, which is an important aspect of a fight, but the downside is they tend to divorce the hand fighting from everything else and focus on that about 90% of the time, and everything else that a fight is about 10% of the time. And that's, if you're doing that as cross-training, okay, cool. In the same way that, say, you do boxing as cross-training, because boxing focuses on an aspect of what a fight is, striking and footwork, so you can move relative to your opponent to land a strike and so on. But if that's all you ever do, and then get into a cage fight, you're going to have a difficult time, right? So if all you do is the hand fighting, or predominantly the hand fighting and very little of anything else, you're going to have a very difficult time with, say, an MMA fight or any type of fight that does anything except hand fighting, trapping, etc. Okay? So if you already know how to fight, you're going to be able to glean a lot of really interesting things from a martial art like Wing Chun. If you don't already know how to fight, I think going into something like that initially could end up confusing, depending on the instructor, because it's going to be taught very differently from one coach to another. Now, Muay Thai. Everybody knows about Muay Thai, and at the same time, it's a term that gets abused in the martial arts community. Here's what I mean by that. Right now, people use Muay Thai as a blanket term for striking, involving kicking and punching, whether it's Muay Thai or not. A lot of gyms, if they have a kickboxing class or an MMA striking class or any type of striking class, they will often call it Muay Thai, which is not factually or stylistically correct. Oh, sweet. We got a super chat with no question from Martial Geeks. Thank you, man. If we're looking at Muay Thai as a style, as it is taught in Thailand, as it is practiced in Thailand, as you would see it in Lumpini Boxing Stadium or Rajadamnern Stadium or someplace like that, then again, we're looking at a much more broad application of various fighting techniques than a more singular focused martial art like Wing Chun. But at the same time, we're also working with very specific limitations, the greatest of which is pretending that the floor is lava. So, if you know how to fight, and by fight I mean you know how to strike, you know how to grapple, you know how to mix the two. You're a mixed martial artist. We're talking about specifically mixed martial arts here because that's what we do here on this channel, MMA. So, if you know how to fight, and then you train in Muay Thai, great, you're going to be able to glean a bunch of stuff from that. And by Muay Thai, I don't mean just generally striking and kickboxing, but as it is taught in Thailand. Anyway, this reminds me, I had a student the other day. He came in for a private lesson, and he asked me to answer a question, because I made a statement in one of my older videos that about 80% of every martial art or combat sport doesn't work in MMA. And he said, well, what do you mean by that? Like, what parts of boxing don't work in MMA? What parts of wrestling don't work in MMA? And the answer to all of those questions is the fight strategy. Right? If you go into an MMA fight with a boxing strategy, you will lose, and you will lose handily. If you go into an MMA fight with a Muay Thai strategy, you will most likely lose. because it's a different sport and you have to respect that. So, anyway, I'm yammering here and I've missed like 5,000 of your questions. Do I think Muay Thai is great for self-defense? The whole self-defense industry is power, fantasy, and I don't even want to talk about it today. So, self-defense, schmelf-defense, man. The best self-defense, stay out of trouble, kids. Stay out of trouble. I got a great comment the other day from a former military guy, and he wrote a little bit about his military service. And when he started, he was a bit. He would go out to the bar and drink with his buddies on their off time. And he got into a lot of fights, and he said he changed one thing. He stopped drinking, and because he stopped drinking, he stopped going to bars, and suddenly he never got into a street fight again. Funny how that works. What a great comment that was. Sweet, we got a super chat from Todd Cannon who says, all you have to do, sir, to stop a man's will to fight is disarm him with your rich, soothing voice. I have done that in real life, I kid you not. And I've told some of those stories here on this channel. I've been mugged a number of times. I used to live in Argentina back in the 90s. I was a missionary for my church in the slums of Buenos Aires, and they are very crime-ridden places. There's a lot of violence, a lot of shooting. I saw people killed, I saw people shot, I saw people stabbed, executed. Not far from where I was standing, some pretty gnarly stuff. And that, man, I'm having flashbacks just saying that right now. Where was I going with that question? Ah, yes, disarming a man with the voice. So, just one story, and I've probably told this before at least a dozen times on this channel, but here we go again. So I'm a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. 1997, I think it was. I'm walking through this town called José Sepas, through the slums around this town. And this gang of young men, about a dozen of them, chase me and my missionary companions, surround us. They pull out weapons. One has a gun. Some of them have knives. One of them swinging a chain around. The little one has a brick he's patting in his hand. And they're like, you know, the drill, give us your money, give us everything you have. And I say, all right, look, I will give you everything that I have. I had a friend who got shot in the head because his money was in his backpack. He was being mugged. He starts taking it off. The gunman gets nervous because he sees the movement and he squeezes the trigger. Boom. My friend survived miraculously, but man, that was a bloody, horrific incident, man. And I remember this, just thinking about this, like, I can't make any sudden movements. I have to narrate everything I do slowly and calmly, which I did. And I would recommend that to you if you end up in a situation like this. Narrate everything you do slowly and calmly, unless they specifically tell you to shut up. So I say, I will give you everything that I have. I take out my bag. I say, I'm opening up this bag. I am emptying it on the ground. You can have everything. And they're like, well, what is this? And the bag is filled with copies of the Book of Mormon, pamphlets that say Our Heavenly Father's Plan with a picture of Jesus on the front and the address of the church on the back. And I start handing them out. Here, you can have a copy of the Book of Mormon. It's another testament of Jesus Christ. Here's a pamphlet. You can come to church on Sunday. The address is on the back. And I go up to the guy with the gun, who appears to be the de facto leader of the group, hand him my Bible, and I say, and since I'm all out of the other books, you may have my Bible. He handed it back to me, and he said, forget it, man. Just forget it. Never mind. Get out of here. Just get out of here. So yes, talking can solve a lot of problems. It won't solve every problem, but it can certainly solve a lot, if not most of them. We have some super chats I missed while I was telling that story. What is my opinion on bare knuckle boxing? I've watched a number of bare knuckle boxing matches. It's boxing without the gloves on. So I don't know. The idea of boxing being bare knuckle or with gloves on doesn't really make a lot of difference to me, to be honest. If you're doing like Muay Thai with the gloves on or with the card chook on or whatever you call the ropes on the hands, it doesn't make a lot of difference to me. It's going to make a difference in the amount of superficial damage and cuts and bruises and so on the face, but it's boxing. It's boxing. It's not a radically different sport. It's an importantly different sport because anytime you change even one small rule, like take away the gloves, suddenly everything gets different. I remember the very first modern bare-knuckle boxing match in the BKFC organization that I watched. I don't remember which fighter it was, but this fellow was going out very aggressive, punching as if he were wearing gloves, and he broke his right hand. And for the rest of the fight, the dude was keeping his right hand very low and not using that right hand anymore. And I knew, oh man, he broke his hand on the dude's elbow, man, which is something that probably would not have happened with the gloves on. So yeah, it's a sport where it's hyped up a lot, like this is so much more dangerous and extreme. But the ways in which it's more dangerous are not readily apparent to the people watching it. It's definitely more dangerous to your hands. That's for sure. It's more dangerous to the skin. Is it more dangerous ultimately and overall? Not necessarily. Next super chat comes from R32P4000. Guys, I keep telling you, don't use your passwords as your screen names. Anyway, thank you for the super chat. Our friend says, are you familiar with the shooting sport USPSA? I am not. USPSA. Let's look that up. Now, you can't see it on the screen, but I'm going to look it up. USPAS shooting competition. Let's take a quick look and familiarize ourselves with what this is. Let's see here. Shooting USA 2021 USPA Low Cap Nationals. I'm just going to take a look at a few seconds of this. Looks like oh, okay. So it's one of these things. They set up a series of targets out on a range, and they have to hit a number of different targets at different angles. It looks like they're emulating taking cover behind certain obstacles and then shooting other. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I've seen this sort of thing. I didn't realize there was like a national championship for this. My friend Jeremy Horn, former UFC champion, he does this sort of thing. If you watch his YouTube channel, there's a lot of gaming stuff and a lot of shooting stuff. Not as much MMA stuff. I wish he would post more MMA content on his channel, but he's way into shooting and things like this. So yeah, go check him out if you're interested in shooting sports. So I'm now familiar with the shooting sport USPSA. So thanks for bringing that to my attention. Lucas Mello sends in a super chat and says, hello, Ramsey. There aren't almost any wrestling gyms in the state where I live. I'm from Brazil. Is judo a great alternative for wrestling, or should I go straight into BJJ? Okay, wrestling, judo, BJJ, they're all grappling. They've all got crossover, and they're all importantly different. So, what do you want to learn? What's your goal here? Do you want to go to the Olympics and be a wrestling champion? Do you want to compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and be a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitor? Do you want to compete in judo and learn how to throw people around? Is this a question like, which one is best for self-defense? But you didn't include the self-defense part because I said, I don't want to talk about that right now. My recommendation, do what you can. Do what you can. There are, again, I don't know what the situation is in Brazil. There are Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu experts who are terrible wrestlers and some who are amazing wrestlers. So it's a bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? A bit of a grab bag. You never know what you're going to get. It's like a box of chocolates, man, when you go to a Jiu-Jitsu gym to know whether or not you're going to get some halfway decent wrestling instruction along the way. So try out a few different gyms. Try out a few different judo gyms, jiu-jitsu gyms, and see if any of them offer any wrestling instruction, or at least any comparable instruction to wrestling that are consistent with your goals. Like, really, this might sound like a dismissive answer, because it's the answer that comes up a lot when people ask questions like, which of all the gyms should I join? It's just go try them out, man. Go try them out. But how is judo different from wrestling? Well, in the modern world, modern sport judo, all upper body attacks, and you wear the gi. So it's a little bit like Greco-Roman wrestling, a little bit, in the fact that you're not allowed to attack the lower extremities, but of course you wear the gi, and that changes everything about your setups and your grips and your counters and so on. Your leverages. There is a very limited amount of time you're allowed to fight on the ground in judo. If you avoid the ippon, for example, if you end up on the ground but your shoulders are not pinned to the floor, then the fight may continue for a short amount of time. I don't remember what the time limit is now. What is it, like 20 seconds, 30 seconds? I don't know. They've changed the rules a lot since I last read them. So, yeah, in the sport of wrestling, the goal is to pin your opponent. Pretty much every form of wrestling, they all have different rules. There are a few different varieties, etc. But yeah, don't beat yourself up if you can't find good wrestling instruction in real life, because thank goodness we have the internet now, and I know it's not a perfect amalgam for a live instructor, but it's way, way better than nothing. Martial Geek sends in a super chat. Thank you very much. He says, pressing against the cage makes Wing Chun make more sense. Yeah, if you can get into a situation pressed up against the cage, or even in your guard, or even in your opponent's guard, where you can maintain essentially the hand-fighting, trapping distance with an opponent, then sure, that makes sense. Hand-fighting and trapping in a fight, it happens like, boom, you're there, and then you're out. And if you try to stick to him, he's going to move, he's going to cut an angle, he's going to take a step back, he's going to shoot under you, something like that. And so it's dynamic. And so about 5% of the time in a MMA fight, for example, you might run into a hand-fighting, trapping situation where a Wing Chun technique might be viable. And 95% of the time, you're going to be somewhere else. But yeah, as you pointed out, if you can find a position, including guard, top and bottom, pressing up against the cage, etc., where you can close the distance and keep it closed for a good long while, then yeah, many of those techniques can certainly come into play. We have a super chat from Jordan Hodgkins who says, is there beef between you and Rokas? Beef, it's what's for dinner. No, there is not beef between me and Rokas. He's probably asking this because of what happened at the Ultimate Self-Defense Catastrophe that Rokas hosted, where what are those guys called? The Western Combatives crew permanently crippled my knees for life. So screw those guys. There's beef with me and them. Man, an apology would go a long way, but no. They maintain plausible deniability. So if you're not aware, in that zombie episode where it was supposed to be like the safe, fun one where it's just for funsies or whatever, there's a dude climbing up on the ceiling. I don't know why he thought it was a good idea to climb on the ceiling next to the door he knew we would be passing under. We pass under the door, we fight one of these fake zombies. I'm propped up against the wall, my knees are locked out. Very tired because, again, very sleep deprived and recovering from COVID, having a very, very hard time just walking around, let alone doing any of this nonsense. And then this dude loses his grips on the I-beam he's clinging to on the ceiling, falls on my head with his entire body weight, hyperextends my knee, tears up the ligaments in my knee, my PCL is ruptured completely, the cartilage is shredded, It is irreparable damage. I am crippled for life. It absolutely sucks. 13 months later. I'm walking around with walking sticks, guys. So this pisses me off a lot, and I can't help but to think about it every single time I use my legs, which is all the time, except perhaps right now because I'm sitting down. But I'm thinking about it because you asked about it, and it makes me upset. It makes me angry. Yes, what makes me more upset is the reaction I got from these Western combatives guys after this event. After this event. They added insult to injury. Some of these fellows that I had met and known in person, who to my face were very nice and polite. As soon as there was distance, as soon as I was back in China, oh my goodness. The vitriol that came out of their minds and black hearts into the comment section. And the comment section of YouTube is famously known for being awful. And I've been on YouTube since the beginning of YouTube, back before they had any community standards to sanitize the comment section. And brother, let me tell you, this was the worst I have ever seen it. So, is my beef with Rokas? No. Is it with the folks over there at Western Combatives? Heck yeah. Screw those guys. Anyway, that's my rant. I missed some super chats. Let's back up here. What was the next one? We have a super chat from Scott T, who says, "Hi, Ramsey. I hope you're doing well." Oh, the irony of me telling this, ranting about being my crippled knees now. I'm glad you hope I'm doing well, man. That actually, well wishes can go a long way, man. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I really do. What are your thoughts on people training judo, wrestling, or BJJ and not wanting to compete? Cool. You don't have to compete. Everybody should train, in my opinion, but not everybody needs to compete. You don't have to. It's fine. It's absolutely fine if you don't want to compete. It's cool. Strongly encourage it. Get out there and train. You notice that at the end of every one of my videos, I tell you, thanks for watching. Now get out there and train. Not now get out there and compete. Now get out there and fight. Now get out there and do the local jiu-jitsu tournament. Somebody asked me, "Hey, Ramsey, when do you," something like, "when do you tell your fighters that they're ready to compete?" And I'm like, I don't. If they want to compete, they have to be the ones to take the initiative. I'm not going to push them into it. Because to be about that life, you have to want it. I've received a ton of questions from guys telling me, "Yeah, my coach really wants me to fight and I don't want to do it. And oh man, this isn't for me. My heart's not in it. What do I do?" You make your choice. It's what a man does. You don't let somebody else dictate that for you. Fighting's serious, man. It's not a game. It's not a game. And if you don't want to do it, if you don't want to be about that life, and that's not a blow to your manhood if you don't compete, right? Don't think you're not a real man if you don't compete or get out there and fight, man. You don't have to. It's fine. Man, there are some of the toughest dudes I know are those gym rats who never compete. And they can lick anybody in the gym, man. You probably know some of these guys. If you train consistently, you meet these guys and they're like, "Why don't you compete? You're better than everybody here." You'll even see these guys who in the gym can tap out the world champion. And you're wondering, why doesn't this guy compete? Because he doesn't need to. What's that UFC fighter, man? Blanking on names. He's got dark hair. Smaller weight class. Dominic Cruz. Yeah, Dominic Cruz. The best post-fight interview in the history of the UFC came from Dominic Cruz after he won his title. And he had quite the struggle to get there. He tore both ACLs. He had plantar myofasciitis in both feet. I've had that. It sucks. Man. The fact that he was able to win a UFC title under these conditions is more than a minor miracle. And the dude struggled. He accomplished this lifetime goal, etc. And then afterwards, the interviewer asked him, "Is this the greatest moment of your life? Is this the greatest day of your life, the best day of your life?" And he said, "No. The greatest day of my life was when I realized I don't need a belt to be happy." Boom. Mic drop right there. Brian Fong sends in a super chat. "No questions. Awesome. I know Brian Fong. He came to my gym. He trained with me. Awesome dude. He's from Panama. We had a great training session. And yeah, man, Brian, how you doing, man? Appreciate the donation." Todd Cannon says, "How many languages do you speak?" Languages I speak well and fluently: English and Spanish. Languages I can speak like a caveman. I can speak like caveman Mandarin, caveman Portuguese, caveman Italian. I can read Portuguese, I can read Italian, I can read French. Don't ask me to speak French, though, but I can read it. So if you write a comment in Portuguese or Francais, Español, Italiano, I can read it. Let's see here. If you write it in Chinese, I might be able to read it. The problem is there are just so many characters. There are thousands of characters. I know hundreds of characters. I don't know thousands of characters yet. All right, we got Lucas is here again in the super chats. Lucas here again. Is judo or BJJ question was because I want to get started at grappling to get more rounded as a martial artist, since all I know is Muay Thai. I do it as an enjoyer. Okay, cool. Let's see here. Well, both of them will help you get more well-rounded. I can give you some pros and cons of each. Judo will probably give you a lot of aha moments. As far as clinch work goes, the clinch work is importantly different because, again, you're working with the gi in judo, but you can always extrapolate no-gi variations. For example, a collar grip is relatively analogous to a what do we call that? A collar tie, right? A cross-collar grip is relatively analogous to a reverse collar tie, and so on. Not exactly, but you know, if you pay attention to your clinch work in Muay Thai, which you should be doing, everybody who says they train Muay Thai should be doing a lot of clinch work, a lot of clinch sparring, a lot of clinch training. So judo can definitely help you with that, but also give you a lot of aha moments to fill in the blanks, like, oh, there's a sweep here I didn't know about. Oh, there's a takedown, there's a throw here, there's a setup here to unbalance the guy I didn't realize was there, right? Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the main focus, obviously, fighting on the ground. Now, you're going to have a little bit different, maybe a radically different experience from one gym to another. Some people might focus more on the stand-up game as well, but overall, most gyms will focus almost exclusively on groundwork. So if you do a Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you're likely going to be missing that piece of the puzzle in the middle. Right, connecting the dots between the stand-up game, the clinch, and how did we get on the ground all of a sudden? So it's great to be able to dictate how you get on the ground. So judo will certainly help you do that. If it's possible to do all of them, great, do that. If it's possible to do all of them over a long period of time throughout your life, great, do that too, especially if you're doing it casually. because you got time on your side. There's not a rush to get ready for the fight, but rather the quest of accumulating knowledge and being a martial artist. Somebody said, do I speak Klingon? Klingon ho jiajbe. I know a few phrases in Klingon. That's Klingon, the Klingon language. I understand you. I had a roommate in college, and he had a Klingon to English dictionary. This is like pre-internet era. And I thought it was the coolest thing. We'd stay up and we were such nerds. Like, instead of like asking girls on dates and stuff, we'd be hanging out studying Klingon. Like, oh, how do you say I hit you? Jequipper. How do you say you hit me? Bequipje. That's really how you say it, because again, we were nerds. Manfred Conner says, have I ever watched the YouTuber Serpensa? He's a South African guy who spent a lot of time in China. I was wondering if you've seen or like his videos about China. I've seen a few of his videos, and not a big fan. The videos I have seen, he was propagating some misinformation about China. He definitely has an anti-China bias, and he's definitely carved out a niche for himself, speaking out against all things Chinese. So, no, China's not a perfect place, but it's not the everything about China is bad and wrong and evil that he paints it out to be, man. It's a country like everywhere in the world, man. Actually, China's very unique in all of the world in many ways. Everywhere is. Everywhere. Anyway, I don't want to get into that and rag on other YouTubers, even if I don't particularly care for their product right now. But yeah, I do get a lot of comments because of that guy, and this is why I'm answering this question. Like, oh, I watched this guy's channel and he said this thing about China. I'm like, dude, that dude hasn't even lived in China for years, man. He's all of his information is secondhand information at best. So yeah, a lot of his information is way behind the times at this point. Bruno Poller sends in a super chat. Hey Ramsey, I love the Thai clinch, and I am wondering about its various uses in judo and jiu-jitsu, especially since people can go for the legs. Okay. When people say the Thai clinch singular, that's a problem, because there are many, many, many ways to clinch in Muay Thai. A lot of people, when they say the Thai clinch, they mean double collar ties. And that is only one way to clinch in Muay Thai. Now, I hope what you mean is you like the art of clinching in Muay Thai. It's like a whole different sub-martial art. So, the various uses of what you can learn from clinching in Muay Thai in judo, specifically since people can go for the legs. Well, the grappling rule set as far as legs go in Muay Thai is actually shockingly similar to the grappling rule set of going for the legs in Muay Thai, meaning you can sweep the legs. You cannot grab the legs unless, of course, the guy throws a kick at you, then you can catch the kick and then use that catch to sweep him or strike him, etc., or move into a clinch from that. But you can't go for, say, a single leg takedown or a double leg takedown in either of those arts according to the current rule set. Let's see here. What's the crossover we're going to see between judo and jiu-jitsu? I think if you train a lot of clinching in Muay Thai, specifically for the sport of Muay Thai, and then you put on a gi for the first time, you put on a judo gi for the first time, and then you go to judo class, and then you try to get your collar ties and your reverse collar ties, and you're going to be endlessly frustrated because that guy's going to have a collar grip on you, and you won't be able to reach him, and you won't know how to break the grip, and you're going to think like, man, I thought I was good at this, and suddenly I don't know how to clinch anymore. It's a very different dynamic of clinching. So it's a cool contrast. once you get used to it. There was a huge argument that went on for many years in the MMA community and in the jiu-jitsu community about training in the gi and how you needed to train in the gi to be good at grappling without the gi. You needed to train in the gi to be good at MMA. This was a thing people said. Now people hear this and they're like, well, that's kind of dumb. Why would anybody believe that? But that was what was dogmatically preached. You've got to train in the gi. And people would come up with all of these apologetics for why you had to train in the gi to be good at these things that didn't even use the gi. Now, the reason I bring this up is because I'm going to offer you a little bit of gi apologetics, but not too much. Really, contrast is a valuable teacher. And it is cool to have the ability to handle yourself with and without a gi, with and without clothes on, with and without grips. Because if you can do that and you're confident with both styles of clinching, that's a huge burden off your back. It's kind of funny. In the MMA community, if you don't have a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a lot of people will instantly write you off, in spite of the fact that many of the UFC champions throughout history have not had black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But they will say, oh, you don't have a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Well, you must not know the sport of mixed martial arts, even though these are importantly different things. Essentially what they're saying is, because your alleged skill, as far as I can ascertain from your belt rank, with handling the grips on this cloth, on this uniform, are not up to my standards. Therefore, your abilities in a sport that involves zero grips on cloth are suspect. So it is a very strange idea, but it's one that we have not been able to divorce from. And I do understand why, because people see the black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as the gold standard of grappling for mixed martial arts. But is it still? That is interesting. Jack O'Driscoll says, have I ever seen Irish collar and elbow wrestling? No, but I've heard about it. And I have scoured the internet trying to find any footage of it, and I have not been able to find anything other than it's a thing that exists. So Irish collar and elbow wrestling, no idea what it looks like, no idea what the rules are. I've been hearing about it for ages. Don't know. Manfred Connor says, do I like Sichuan mala hot pot? My wife loves hot pot. I think hot pot's okay. I'll eat it, but I don't get super excited about it. A lot of folks here in China just start drooling when you mention hot pot. Like, oh, hot pot, it's my favorite thing in the world. If you don't know what hot pot is, you basically get a big old cauldron of soup and you boil that. It can be spicy soup. It can be not spicy soup. And then you get a bunch of meats and vegetables and mushrooms and whatever, and you cook it in the soup and you eat it. That's a hot pot. So, yeah, you cook it at the table. Everybody's sitting around this pot. They've all got just stacks of raw meat and vegetables, and they put them in this hot boiling soup, and then they eat it. Anyway, very, very popular in China. It's okay. It's okay, but again, I don't get super excited about it. Combat self-defense has an interesting question. He says, Ramsey, is there a fantasy or bogus martial art that you wished worked? For example, I love Hapkido, but I recognize that I admire it for its own sake and not for fighting. I don't know about a fighting style, but there are certain moves I wish were higher percentage than they are. Like, since you mentioned Hapkido, a lot of Hapkido practitioners will do like the dragon tail sweep, that low spinning hook kick sweep. And that's one that I do pull that out from time to time, and I do make that work from time to time, but it's always going to be a fairly low percentage technique. That's one I wish was as easy to pull off in real life as it is in Mortal Kombat. You know, I've seen a few dudes pull it off here and there, and it's super fun and it's awesome when it happens, but it's like it happens so rarely, so infrequently. The setup to make it work, the imbalance to make it work is so infrequent. But that's one of those moves I wish was just more grounded in high percentageness than it is. I think I might have missed a super chat here. There we go. Panda S says, I only trained with 14 ounce and 16 ounce, I assume you mean gloves. I've heard that we should really be using 8 to 10 ounces for bag and mitts. Do you really feel the difference? Look, different glove manufacturers will manufacture gloves very differently. Not every 14-ounce glove is the same. Not every 14-ounce glove weighs 14 ounces. Did you know that? Not every 16-ounce glove weighs a full pound. Some of these gloves are very dense and very hard. Some of them are soft and squishy. But, yeah, man, if for example, you get a Everlast glove and a Fairtex glove, and they both have 12 ounces written on the side, they're not going to feel the same. It's not. Look, as far as your bag work, get whatever gloves you feel comfortable punching the bag with. Also, get a separate set of bag gloves and sparring gloves, because with the bag gloves, you're going to pack those. Packing gloves means you are crushing the padding. That foam is compressing. And the more it compresses, the more it wears down, the more that glove is going to be packed, and the more dangerous that is going to be to spar with. So have a different set of bag gloves and sparring gloves. That's the most important thing. That's more important than how many ounces it's going to have. I like the light bag gloves that don't have any padding on them at all, like those old school leather ones for bag work. I like those. They feel good. Not everybody likes those, but I like them. And I know some very good boxers who, for their bag work, use giant gloves with like 18 ounces of padding on them. I've tried those out. They felt fine. I didn't see a problem with it. I've used all sizes of gloves on the bags. I've gone through dozens. How many different sets of boxing gloves have I gone through and worn out over the years? A lot. A lot. And a ton of different brands. Man. Any manufacturers out there who want me to test out and review your gloves, hit me up. I have done that on this channel a number of times. So, the brand of the glove is going to make a lot more difference than the weight written on the side of the glove. So, some people will tell you, use bigger gloves for sparring and smaller gloves for bag work. But again, with bag work, since you're going to be doing a lot more contact with the bag, what you need is a setup for your hands, whether that is wraps and gloves, that is going to protect your hands to the point where you are able to repeat this activity regularly. Because if you're wearing smaller gloves and your hands aren't ready for it, and it's the wrong type of glove, and it's murder on your wrists, then you won't be able to log enough hours of heavy bag work to meet your goals. So again, just try out some different gloves. If you go to a gym, your gym probably has a bunch of old gloves hanging around on the wall somewhere. Try them on. See how they feel. See how they feel different than the ones you're used to. Hope that helps. We have another super chat from Shayla Namhisil, who says, Hello, Ramsey. I'm sorry to hear about your knee. Appreciate that. About your knee injury, and I'm wishing you a speedy recovery. I was wondering, who do you think won the Sean Strickland versus Dricus Du Plessis fight? I didn't see that fight. So I'm assuming it was a controversial decision. Huh. How long was the fight? Was it a 25-minute fight? Because I was about to look it up. But if it's 25 minutes, I'm not going to sit here staring at the screen for 25 minutes. Let's see here. Sean Strickland versus Dricus Duplessis. What is this guy's name? Okay, yeah, that's looks like a fight that went to a decision. Let's just take a look at a couple of clips, since that's what's available here. Obviously, you won't see these clips at home. I just want to see just a little bit of this. Okay, I'm just skimming through. It looks like Duplessis is hitting a lot of takedowns here. Landed some nice strikes early on. Some good counters. Of course, this is just one round of the fight. Sean Strickland's attempting to counter and landing on the shoulders. So early on in the fight, it looks like, and I'm watching this like way faster than normal. Let's see here. Yeah, this round, as far as I'm seeing it so far, Duplessis, I'm not sure how to say this guy's name, is definitely winning the round. Definitely winning this round. He gets another takedown. Sean's now bleeding. So, if the rest of this fight is similar to this first round, which again, I don't have time to watch the entire fight right now, or if the first round is indicative of what happens in the rest, I would guess Duplessis was awarded the decision, but let's fast forward to the end and see what the judges thought, and maybe I'll rewatch this later. Are they going to show the judge's decision in this video? Okay, yeah, so Duplessis, again, I'm probably pronouncing his name incorrectly, won the decision on that fight. Again, based on like the couple minutes of that I just saw in fast motion, like, yeah, I don't know, it looked like a fair decision, but let me know what you thought about that one. Do you feel like there was something in that fight that Sean Strickland did that would have merited the win? Please let me know what you think about that. Ihihiha says, can you make a video about using the high guard with MMA gloves? By high guard, do you simply mean covering up? Do you mean like having your hands... People call different guards different things. But look, MMA gloves or boxing gloves shouldn't change how you use that guard. Because if you're receiving impact on your hands, on the metacarpals here, no matter what type of glove you're wearing, that's the wrong way to do it. If you are blocking a punch with a cover-up from a high guard, it should be landed on your forearms there. Because this is strong, this is weak. Even with an inch of foam over that, even with half an inch of foam over that. Because an MMA glove and a boxing glove have a similar, a similar amount of foam over the back of the hand. In fact, a lot of the MMA gloves that are used in professional fights, for example, Fairtex gloves, somebody's mentioning those in the comments. OTR Adventurous says, I use Fairtex. Yeah. The MMA gloves have an excessive amount of padding on the back of the hand for some reason, which is weird. I don't know why they don't put more padding over the knuckles themselves. There's like the least amount of padding over the knuckles and the most padding over the back of the hand. It's a weird glove design. Whoever designed MMA gloves never fought in MMA, as far as I can tell. And maybe they did that because they're trying to emulate boxing gloves, because they have the same misunderstanding that you do, that blocking is done with the gloves and with the hands. No. Look, high guard, covering up with a high guard, block with your forearms, not with your hands. Whether you're wearing a boxing glove, MMA gloves, or no gloves at all. Okay. What other questions do we have? Jamie Ray says, hey, Coach, I'm wondering if you enjoy any folk wrestling styles. Heck yeah. Scottish backhold, bok, sumo, collar and elbow, catch. Yeah, catch wrestling is something I do. I enjoy the sport of catch wrestling. Bok, I watch that quite a bit. I haven't competed in it. I know some guys who do. They go up to Mongolia or Inner Mongolia and compete in that. Bok has very similar rules to Shuaijiao, Chinese traditional folk wrestling, which is another style that I do. I enjoy that. It's a jacketed wrestling style. The Chinese jacket has short sleeves. It's similar to a judo jacket, but it's got short sleeves. So that changes the techniques. It allows you to get double grips on like right here, nice and easily, and then the collar, which is like an overpowered grip. You can also do that with a sambo kurtka, right? Because it's got the pleat in the shoulder. You can try to grab like a judo or a jiu-jitsu gi right there, but unless it's loose fitting, you're going to have a hard time getting a comparable grip. But yeah, it's fun. I enjoy Shuaijiao a lot. It's a very fun sport. Haven't done it since I injured my knee. Actually, I have, but I didn't do well with an injured knee. But yeah. And once again, I don't know what collar and elbow is. People keep talking about it, and I've never been able to find any information about collar and elbow wrestling on the internet. So what the heck is collar and elbow wrestling? Somebody explain that to me. Chris says, okay, Ramsey, time to confess. After watching Kickboxer as a kid, you promptly went out to the woods to attempt to break a tree with your shins. I was a teenager when Kickboxer came out, and after that movie came out, I didn't go out to the woods. I went into my backyard. We had a dead cherry tree in my backyard, and I kicked that cherry tree. And I kicked that cherry tree every day because Kickboxer convinced me that that's what tough guys did. And a cherry tree is way, way harder than a banana tree. A banana tree has give to it. Yeah, you were right, Chris. That's exactly what it is. I watched that movie and I was like, so this is how you train in martial arts. This is what you got to do to be tough. This is what you have to do to beat the big bad guy. So yes, I went out and I kicked the tree, and I did that every day until that dead cherry tree was finally uprooted. So, yeah. It was a small cherry tree. It was probably maybe 4 inches in diameter. Didn't feel good on the shins, man, so I wouldn't recommend that. I wouldn't recommend go out and kick dead trees, even if they're little ones. If you want to toughen up your shins, and you're still confused about how to do it, just kick a heavy bag. Kick it every day. Oh, sweet, Elijah Stevenson is in the chat. Hey, Elijah, how you doing, man? Elijah's a super cool guy. He's from Australia. I met him when I was down there. Awesome dude. He runs a gym down there. So, if you're in Australia looking for a place to train, go hit up Elijah Stevenson. What's it called? Kingdom Martial Arts? Is that the one? Kingdom Martial Arts, I believe. We did a podcast together. It's up on Elijah's channel. Go check that out. He's got some good training videos. Yeah. So yes, Kingdom Martial Arts, Elijah Stevenson. If you are in... What's the actual city you live in? Is it like part of... why am I blanking on the names of Australian cities now? Central Coast, New South Wales. Okay, there we go. So if you're in Central Coast, New South Wales, in Australia, go check out Kingdom Martial Arts. Awesome dude. Okay. But yeah, as I was saying, if you want to get tough shins, just kick the bag. Kick it every day. Be consistent. You don't have to do crazy things. Just be consistent. Yeah. Finally, we get an explanation of what collar and elbow wrestling is. Collar and elbow is basically judo that allows leg entanglement. Okay? And you are forced to keep a lapel sleeve grip the entire time. Okay, so it's like a jacketed style. That is, fighters start by gripping their jackets this way. All right, so you start with the jacket grip. You have to keep that. Is it like a very specific grip you have to get, or just like any grip on the jacket and you have to keep it? Because that would make a big difference. Because I've seen like some wrestling styles, I don't remember the name of it, like some European style where they wear a belt and they have to keep a hold of the belt the whole time while they do this, and they have to try to throw the other guy to the ground while holding onto the belt, and they can't let go of that specific grip. Is it something like that? So it's a lapel and sleeve grip. So is this like something, is it something you could do with a jiu-jitsu gi or a sambo kurtka or something like that? Or do you have to get like a specialized jacket? That would be interesting to know. You should make a video about collar and elbow wrestling, dude. I see you don't have any content on your channel right now, but you should definitely make a video about collar and elbow wrestling, because there's like no information about that on the internet. And everybody who knows about it isn't making videos about it. So, dude, make that video. I'm not promising that it will explode and get you millions of views, but it will be informative. It will, because people such as myself want to know what this thing looks like, what the rules are, and there is just a vast dearth of information about it. Ihi says, what fighters did you learn most from watching their fights? Now, the first guy that comes to mind is Dong Hyun Kim. And some of you might be saying, who? He fought in the UFC, and he had some fairly unremarkable fights, and he has a lot of losses on his record, but I learned a lot about mixed martial arts watching that guy fight. Like, it's hard to describe. It's not that he did everything right. He did a lot of things right. He did a lot of things that other guys weren't doing at the time. And I remember thinking, like, that's really interesting. If more people did this and refined this game plan, this could be game changing for the sport of mixed martial arts. So I think he was like one of the first fighters that seemed to be on to something that a lot of fighters are doing now without even questioning it, as far as integrating striking and grappling in an interesting way. Again, he's a judo expert and also a pretty good striker. Although during his UFC career, I don't think we saw the best of his striking as we did before he entered into the UFC. Another fighter that I really enjoyed before he retired was John Lewis. And he was like the first fighter in the UFC where I was like, whoa, this is different. This guy he has changed the metric of cage fighting. This was before they called it mixed martial arts, and I saw John Lewis, and he just seamlessly mixed Muay Thai striking and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in ways I'd never seen anybody do it before. I know a lot of people give shout-outs to Marco Ruas, and rightfully so, because he was like that first guy who could grapple and strike, who was beating guys with leg kicks and stuff that people remember in the UFC. But like, John Lewis was doing this at a different level, in a different way. And man, I really enjoyed seeing him fight, and I was sad when he retired, but man, I learned a lot watching his fights. Who else? Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva is one of those guys where people would say, oh, you can't emulate him. He's just some freak who does these crazy things no one else can do. And I remember seeing Anderson Silva use head movement effectively in mixed martial arts at a point in history where people were saying, you can't do head movement in MMA because you'll just get knocked out. And suddenly that wasn't true anymore. And I remember thinking, I now feel emboldened to bring my striking game to the next level. And it's funny because you you don't need permission to be excellent in mixed martial arts, but sometimes it feels like you need to see somebody do the thing before you can believe that the thing is even possible. Hey, Dan the Wolfman's in the chat. Dan, how you doing, man? He's talking about John Lewis here. John Lewis was World Extreme Fighting, BJJ, and LaBelle guy like me. Cool. We have a super chat from NB Taekwondo Academy who says, no question, just wishing you well and saying thanks again for the thoughts and insight on martial arts. Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate that. What other sports do I like? MG Noevo says, what other sports do I like? Outside of combat sports, I'm not really interested in other sports. I never really have been. I played baseball when I was a kid. I enjoyed playing baseball. I don't enjoy watching baseball. I never really enjoyed watching baseball, but I enjoyed playing it. It's funny how that works. I enjoyed playing soccer when I was a kid. I didn't really enjoy watching soccer. I enjoyed playing basketball as a kid. I didn't enjoy watching basketball. Yeah, it's funny how that works. But as far as being a spectator, like the only sports I'm really that interested in spectating are combat sports. However, that's not entirely true. I do enjoy watching weightlifting. You know, like Olympic weightlifting, clean and jerk, snatch. That is a fun sport to watch. I do enjoy watching powerlifting. It's just cool to watch really strong guys lift heavy stuff, man. It's cool. All right, we got time for maybe a couple more questions. What else do we have? How do you continue to improve yourself as a martial artist and learn more about it? You get out there and train. You never stop asking questions. That's the thing. You never stop asking questions. As soon as you stop asking questions, you stop learning. I can't tell you how many times people have come to me for private lessons, and when I ask them, what do you want to learn? They're like, anything. You tell me, you're the coach. I don't know. Things like that. I'm like, well, hold on a second. That's a less effective way of learning. You need some questions. But before we can even ask the questions, we have to have experiences that expose our limitations. And as soon as those limitations, those weaknesses are exposed, we start asking all the right questions. And until we can ask the right questions, we will never find the answers. And until we find the answers, well, finding the answers is the journey of the martial artist. Nathan Jared says, could the Kung Fu master from the Vinegar Factory fight in the UFC? He's alluding to Master Wu Dao Shui. I am not sure if he is still alive. If he is still alive, he would be 95 years old. Wu Dao Shui was an excellent fighter. And I'm so glad that I met him early on in my stay in China, because he dispelled all the myths about Tai Chi. People think Tai Chi is magic. People think Tai Chi is telekinesis. They think it is ergokinesis. Do you know what ergokinesis? Ergo from body, right? Kinesis, being able to move stuff. a lot of people have this idea that if you harness your chi and you touch somebody else without even using force or pressure or an application of the physical universe, you can make that other person move by like hijacking their nervous system with your chi, something like that. And this is such a popular narrative amongst the hippy-dippy weirdos these days. And once again, I'm so glad I met Master Wu in my first year I was in China, because he dispelled all of that nonsense instantly. One, Taiji, real martial art, it's real grappling, it's real movement, it's real physical force, it's grounded in the physical universe, and it's something learnable. It's not woo-woo nonsense, man. And so every time I see these weirdos, man, I'm going to harp on Adam Misner for a minute, because specifically because so many of his fans and followers have been harassing me lately. I made a video where I exposed like 3 or 4 or 5 of his magic tricks that he performs in the trailer for his documentary, The Power of Chi. And in the trailer, he shows several kung fu magic tricks. And by magic tricks, I mean actual magician's illusions. And I show you how to do all of these things. One of them is so dumb, he literally just pushes a guy down a hill. And they're like, oh, look, it's so magical. He pushed him with his chi. You pushed a guy down a hill, man. Anyway, I bring up this guy because Adam makes the claim to be a master of the mystical power of ergokinesis. Now, he doesn't use those words, but he makes the claim to have this power. And what's very interesting, if you watch his training videos and his seminars, even if he was actually a magical wizard who possessed the supernatural ability of ergokinesis to the extent that he claims, he is absolute garbage at teaching it. Why do I say that? Pedagogy means you are able to teach somebody effectively. And his method of teaching is, you do the thing by doing the thing. And then his students are like, oh, how wise. How wise. Can you imagine? It would be like if you paid for a private lesson with a jiu-jitsu world champion because you really liked his guard passing game and you want to learn how to pass the guard like this jiu-jitsu champion does. And you're like, all right, can you show me your secrets of guard passing? And he says, okay, you pass the guard by passing the guard. That will be $300, please. Yeah, that's the kind of instruction we're dealing with here. Anyway, we have a super chat from Ola Astiman, who says, UFC and MMA have developed a lot in 20 years. How do you see the next 20 years? Oh, boy. The next 20 years, we are going to see a lot more development of the sport of mixed martial arts in and coming out of China. Now, when I first moved to China, I made the estimation that it would take at least 20 years for anybody in China to fight in the UFC. Zheng Tietuan proved me wrong several years later. And then I made the prediction that it would take at least an additional 20 years before there was a UFC champion. Zhang Weili proved me wrong. I made a prediction it would take so long before there were top contenders in various divisions. Li Jingliang proved me wrong. Man, and right now, as far as the women's division in the UFC and the teeny tiny division anyway, the best fighter on the planet is a question of one Chinese fighter versus another Chinese fighter in the UFC. So we'll see how that goes. So Yin Xiaonan versus Zhang Weili. That's going to be an interesting fight. Who you got in that one, guys? You interested in seeing that? Yin Xiaonan, she is super interesting. She's one of my favorite fighters to watch. I remember before anybody in the West even knew who she was, I was watching one of her fights, and she did the coolest sidekick to the chin of her opponent. She just, boom. It's a classic Sanda technique, and she's using classical Sanda techniques in MMA, and it was beautiful and awesome, and I hope to see a great fight when those two go at it. Yeah, Zhang Weili's wrestling has gotten better. Her striking's gotten better too. She's just gotten better at generally speaking, man. It's what happens when you get out there and train and you do it consistently. You get better. But I would say, yeah, in the next 20 years, we're going to see a lot more fighters coming out of China. I don't know if MMA will ever be mainstream in China. But considering in the last 15 years, we've gone from nobody even knows what MMA, nobody knows what Zhonghegedou means in China. Those are Chinese words. Nobody knows what those mean, to there are people who actually know what Zhonghegedou means in China. Integrated combat, mixed martial arts. The first MMA fight I competed in China back in 2009. There was dead silence when the fight was happening. Nobody cheered, nobody booed. It was just like, they looked confused, especially when the fight went to the ground. Like, what is happening? We don't understand this. About a decade later, I was commenting on an MMA fight for Kunlun Fight. And the fight went to the ground. The guy on the bottom started using rubber guard techniques, and I thought, oh man, they're definitely not going to understand this. And hundreds of people in the audience began to cheer for each individual progression from one position in the rubber guard to the next, because they recognized exactly what was going on. And I realized, these guys know Eddie Bravo's system. I'm out here in like Chengdu, China, and these guys know what rubber guard is. They know what these positions mean. They realize this guy's making progress toward a submission. And when he clears a shoulder, he sets up a triangle choke. They know it, they go insane. Ah! And his opponent's starting to fight the triangle. He's starting to counter it. It's the craziest reaction from an audience I had ever seen for a grappling exchange. In a country where just 10 years previously, nobody knew what grappling on the ground really was. 20 years from now, once again, I don't think MMA will be mainstream in China, but it doesn't have to be. If you get 1% of the Chinese population to be excited about something, that changes the whole world, because this population is massive. And man, when it's a numbers game, when you have that many people to throw at a problem, you get answers. And you get those answers quick. All right, I'm going to take a couple more questions. I always say that. I say a couple more questions, then you guys come up with some interesting questions. Whew. Nargul says, the more technical a sport gets, the worse China performs compared to its size. I would be interested to hear your examples for that, specifically which sports you feel are the most technical that China is underperforming in. If you look at, say, once again, we were talking about weightlifting before, everybody in the weightlifting community looks to the Chinese weightlifting team. Everybody who does weightlifting competitively studies the Chinese weightlifting team. Everybody looks at guys like Lu Xiaojun. And they're studying these guys because they are performing extremely well in this sport. Now, China does really well in the Olympic sports, specifically because they have Olympic training centers where these massive numbers of athletes are filtered down until they get the best of the best. These athletes are taken care of, they are paid, they get housing, they get food, everything is taken care of. As opposed to, say, some other countries where there is no Olympic funding for these sports. But, man, Olympic sports, again, weightlifting, gymnastics, and so on, China tends to perform really well in because they have very good programs for these specific things. Ping pong, man, my goodness, ping pong is insane here, man, like an insane level. And you can't tell me those aren't complicated sports or technical sports. Technical just means there's technique involved. And you cannot tell me that the clean and jerk and the snatch are not technical. Those are like the most technical lifts, man. Incredibly technical lifts. If you don't think so, man, I'd like to see you clean and jerk and snatch some heavy weights overhead without using proper technique. Actually, no, don't. You will injure yourself. Oh. Somebody's mentioning Josh Berkman here. Man, I remember Josh Berkman. He started fighting back in Utah when I was living there. I've met the guy. I don't know him personally, but I have met him. We used to compete on the same fight show, a show called The Ultimate Combat Experience back in Salt Lake City, Utah when I was living out there. What is he up to now? But First Wave Negativity says, who would win in a fight, Dominic Waters or Joshua Berkman? I'm just assuming it's the same Josh Berkman. I'm not familiar with Dominic Waters, and I haven't followed Josh's career in yours, so I'm not sure how he's doing right now. But, man, back in the day, he was a tough dude. He was going places, so, yeah. All right, we have somebody with a Hebrew name. I can't read that. But he says, do you think that jiu-jitsu is going to be a place where people will be so good at submissions that submissions will no longer be a part of the game and we will go back to floor pings like in wrestling? Okay. So I assume you mean like in a jiu-jitsu context, like in a jiu-jitsu tournament. People will get so good at jiu-jitsu, we're not going to see submissions. Most of the matches will be decided by position. We're actually already there. If you look at most jiu-jitsu tournaments, IBJJF in particular, most matches are not decided by submission, although I think about 30% of them are. But the overwhelming majority are decided by points, and the points are decided by positions. Again, 2 points for a takedown, 2 points for a sweep, 2 points for knee mount, 4 points for back mount, 4 points for full mount, and 3 points for a guard pass. And when you have two guys who are very good at doing submissions, defending submissions, avoiding submissions, that game is going to be decided by points, or rather positions. Now, will we get to the point where we will see close to 0% submission finishes in jiu-jitsu tournaments? I don't think so, because we're always going to have new people, and the new people are going to be learning the old thing. And the next generation won't be as good as the previous generation until they learn what the previous generation learned. So that's the thing about getting new people. Now, if we had the same people and we were immortal and we would never get injured and we would just always progress forever and ever, amen, in the sport of jiu-jitsu, that would be a different thing. Then we could get to the point where we would just negate each other all the time. But you've probably had the experience of maybe rolling with somebody who is pretty evenly matched with you and you couldn't submit him, he couldn't submit you, and you were just kind of at a standoff as far as the submissions went. We've kind of seen this in the UFC. In the beginning, It was all grappling. Grappling was dominating. Submissions were king. And then it sort of turned into position is king. Wrestling was dominating. And then it sort of shifted to the guys who were actual mixed martial artists started dominating. So skill sets can cancel each other out. So you hit on a very important principle there with that question. J-Lo says, when you use the phrase know how to fight, do you exclusively mean referring to training in MMA? In this conversation, in this particular video, when I said know how to fight, that is exactly what I'm talking about, because we are discussing mixed martial arts. In other videos where I've said that, not necessarily. So what do I mean by training how to fight? For example, in those videos about the ways I can tell that you don't know how to fight based on goofy YouTube comments that I have been gifted, such as the one I opened up this podcast with, this live stream with. That guy who wrote that thing about, I have this deadly blackout palm strike that is super illegal in the UFC. I would wager that guy doesn't know how to fight. Now, he's probably going to get mad at me about that and write an angry thing like, I know how to fight because on the streets, something about the streets. Yeah. So what do I mean by know how to fight? I mean, you can successfully and consistently impose your will when it comes to a violent altercation with other humans. In the Spirit says, living in China, have you looked into any iron hand training? Dude, I did that stuff before I moved to China. Have I looked into any iron hand training? Do you do any specific knuckle conditioning outside of bag work? Iron hand or iron palm and knuckle conditioning are different things. Iron hand. This is a concrete wall. You just do that sort of thing for like an hour. And then you rub some ointment on your hand, and then you go back the next day, boom, 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 boom. And you do that for a few years until you can smash rocks with your palms. So, knuckle conditioning. Yeah, I did that crap before I moved to China, man. I was a traditional martial artist for a very long time. I hold black belts in Taekwondo, in kyokushin, in Shotokan. I was the king of the demo, man. We smashed bricks, we smashed wood, we smashed all kinds of stuff. And at that point in my life, I felt like if I toughen up my hands enough so I can break through hard things, that will be the answer. And it turned out, no, position is way more important than being able to hit stuff really hard and smash stuff. I remember once I was prepping for this breaking demo, and I went and bought some concrete slabs for this demo, and something, you might not know this about concrete slabs, but they have different densities depending on the percentage of cement and sand those bricks are made with. Some people incorrectly say, oh, those bricks were baked. No, baking the bricks, applying heat to the bricks doesn't make them more dense or less tough or less strong. No. The density, how easy or hard it is to break, is based on how much cement is in it. If there's more cement, it's harder. If there's more sand, it's softer. Okay? So I went and bought a bunch of bricks from a masonry company, and I didn't know the density because every brick has a different density. So what I would always do before a breaking demo, I would take a hammer, a ball peen hammer, to emulate an elbow, and I would give it give them various taps to see like how much force will it actually take to break this brick. And I remember there was this one brick and it was super hard. It was like very, very solid, high percentage of cement. And I had to give it several whacks with this ball peen hammer to break it. And I remember thinking like, that would have absolutely destroyed my elbow and broken my arm if I had attempted to do that. And yet I can easily smash it with a few whacks from a hammer. So what's the point of toughening up your body so much that you can smash through concrete bricks when you can just take a little bit of metal and go boop and kill anybody with it? That was a transformative moment in my martial arts experience. So position is going to be way more productive than doing an hour of that every day. There's a lady, she's on social media here in China. Maybe I'll make a video about her and show you what I'm talking about. And she is a master of iron palm Kung Fu. And her hand is black and gray and twice the hand of her other hand and mostly unusable for anything except breaking stuff. She can't easily articulate her fingers. She can't do anything with this hand except smash stuff. She's turned her hand into a hammer. That's what iron palm is. It's turning your hand so it has both the appearance of iron and the density of iron. If you don't have a hammer on hand, okay, cool. And you don't like to, I don't know, write or comb your hair or brush your teeth or type or use a cell phone or use a computer mouse or button buttons or tie things into knots, then by all means become an iron palm expert. We got a couple of questions. A super chat from Phaser who says, Michael Venom Page's fight style is very front leg heavy, yet he isn't that prone to calf kicks, which would seem like an obvious weakness. Why not? Well, a very simple one. Michael Venom Page doesn't take a lot of leg kicks at all, even though he fights in a stance where leg kicks seem like they would be an answer, a side stance. And he did have that one fight where he did take a leg kick and then immediately got knocked out. But you don't see him take a lot of leg kicks because he quickly darts in and out. He'll dart in, boom, hit you. He'll move out of range where he can't be hit. He'll change the angle. He'll dart in. He dances about on the outside. He's a counter striker, man. It's what counter strikers do. In, out, change the angle, in, out, make you chase me. You chase me, boom, I hit you on the way in. That's what he does. So because he's able to maintain that speed and that athleticism and that style of footwork throughout a fight without gassing out, he's able to consistently keep his legs out of leg kick and calf kick range. Now, if he didn't move like that, if he stood his ground, a guy like that would be eaten alive with leg kicks. And again, who was the guy who knocked out Michael Venom Page? He leg kicked him. MVP's leg buckled, and then he mollywomped him with a punch. Even then, Michael Venom Page is playing a high-risk, high-reward game because his fighting style is entirely dependent on his athleticism. And if he is not able to maintain that level of speed, that level of athleticism, that level of in and out, darting in and out, it doesn't work. And for just like half a second, that fight where he got knocked out, it was just a little bit too slow. Just a little bit. So it's awesome that he is able to maintain that type of athleticism, that type of speed, that type of footwork as consistently as he has. At the same time, if he wants to have longevity in the sport, he's going to have to adapt and develop some other contingency plans. Now, that's my opinion, he could very well prove me wrong and dart in and out for his entire career and keep having enormous success. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? There was a question up here I wanted to answer. Mean Peter 1 says, "Hey Ramsey, how do I get people to respect my range in sparring? My gym does mostly light sparring, and I'm finding it hard to convince my opponents not to step in on me without hitting them too hard." Okay, so it sounds like what's happening, you're trying to keep them away. You're imagining the situation where you're in a fight and you hit them, and because you hit them, they like move out of range or they don't get close. But because you are going light, they feel emboldened to get close, something like that. Okay. I've had this experience too when I was green behind the ears, and I'll tell you the lesson I learned, which is in a fight, you don't know how striking is going to affect your opponent. You can hit a guy with your best shot in a place where you think it should knock him out, and he can still keep coming forward as if it were nothing. This happens. So instead of asking, how do I get people to respect my range in sparring, ask, how do I fix my range in sparring? If they're closing the distance on you, that's your fault for poor position. You should be able to land strikes, and if you're finished with your combo, if you're finished landing strikes, you need to move to a better position. You have to ask, how are you going to impose your will after you land that strike? If you tickle him with the jab, what next? Are you going to follow that with a right straight? Are you going to move out of the way? Are you going to cut a corner? Are you going to shoot for a takedown? Are you going to clinch with him? You have to answer that question. Because you can't just tell yourself, oh, that would have knocked him out. That would have knocked him back. Maybe, maybe not. But you can't afford to make that assumption. Because once again, in fights, you can hit somebody with everything and the kitchen sink, and they will still keep moving forward if they're not knocked out. This happens a lot. People get hit. Probably one of the most common reactions is people will try to grab you when they get hit. It's human instinct. We have 3 really basic instincts when facing violence. When facing danger, either one, run away from the danger, and in a cage fight, in a boxing ring, you can't because you're fenced in, and if you run away, you lose. So we are motivated to stay in the fight, to keep going. It's the rule. So option number 1, can't do that. Option number 2, try to grab and hold the danger so it can't hurt you. Immobilize the danger. This is an instinct. If you watch street fights, for example, yeah, we're talking about the streets for a minute here. Street fights are 2 idiots pushing each other, saying angry words, and then they'll throw some haymakers, grab each other in a schoolyard bully headlock, tumble on the ground in some weird, crappy wrestling until their friends pull them apart. That's like 90% of street fights right there. And we see human instincts come into play. And specifically that human instinct of when the danger starts, people start swinging at each other. That triggers the danger response. And so their natural instinct is to grab and hold, keep that danger close so they can't swing at you. And of course, the other common instinct is to push the danger away from you. Now, this is the one you can weaponize in striking. After you're finished with a striking combination, do one of 2 things. If you are not cutting the corner, or if you are not changing the distance and the angle, follow with a jab or follow with a push kick, and then change your distance and angle. So whatever combination you do, ba, 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 throw my 1, 2, 3, follow with a push kick, or ba, 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 and then exit with the jab. Step out an angle with the jab. Why? That puts distance between you and your opponent. It's not your your sparring partner's job to put distance between you and them when you want distance. That's your prerogative. That's what you need to do. So I hope that was helpful, man. I got a few videos on that concept of finishing your combination with a jab or finishing it with a push kick, once again to create distance. It's funny because like every day somebody writes a comment on one of my Q&A videos saying, "Oh, this guy never makes technique videos, he just talks." Look, I've got over 400 technique videos on my technique video playlist, my fighting techniques playlist, which is more videos total than most martial arts channels on YouTube have. And even that's... Let me just double check that. Anyway, I've got thousands of videos here on YouTube because I've been doing this YouTube thing for 17, 18 years, something like that. But yeah, if you don't know, it's not just talking head videos, man. I've got my videos delineated into playlists, so go give them a watch, including my hundreds of technique videos. There is some valuable stuff in there that answers many of these questions. Who is the best pound-for-pound fighter, in my opinion, says Wayakanox. Something like that. Well, what day is it? Why would the best pound-for-pound fighter be determined by what day it is? Because from day to day, you're not the same fighter. On any given day, your performance could radically change. You might say, who has consistently given the best performances? There's a different question. But yeah, I don't know, man. There are so many fighters out there in the world right now. Who's the best pound for pound? 20 years ago, people had an easy answer to that question. 15 years ago, people had an easy answer to that question. They'd throw out names like Fyodor Emelianenko, George St. Pierre. Now, I don't know if anybody can easily answer that question. People throw out the name like Khabib. He was undefeated. He's definitely very good. Definitely a phenomenal fighter. Can we say he was the best pound for pound? I don't know if we can. People throw out the name John Jones. Consistently given tremendous performances. Arguably the best, maybe. Against very high-level competition. Consistently. Okay. We could argue John Jones. But at the same time, I don't know, man. I don't know. We can always rationalize against it, too. All right, guys. I am going to call it a day. Thank you for joining me in this live broadcast. Thank you for all the questions. Thanks for all the super chats. Appreciate that. And thank you for all the well wishes. It's been a really, really rough last 13 months. Like, I tend to be see the glass as half full type of guy, but man, this last 13 months has been rough. Actually, it was rough even before that, man. With the lockdowns here in Shanghai, man, the gravity of that situation, like, I talked about it in some of my YouTube videos, but at the same time, it's like, I couldn't speak candidly about it. And that's not even because of Chinese censorship or anything like that, because YouTube is not a Chinese platform. anytime I talked about the Shanghai lockdown, my videos would get buried by the algorithm. Nobody would see them, or they would get demonetized, or they would get just, they'd get flagged, man. And it's like something I couldn't talk about because, I don't know, the YouTube robots just wouldn't tolerate it. 27 million people imprisoned for 3 months without adequate food or potable water, many of them, including myself and my family. It was a time where as much as I would tell you, get out there and train, my ability to get out there was taken away from me, and my ability to train was limited to the amount of water that we had, which was very little. I have a student, my friend Fang. You've seen him in some of my YouTube videos. He actually after the Shanghai lockdown, man, the dude, he bought me a water purifier. This very expensive one too, man. I was shocked. I was like, dang, man, I didn't even know these things existed. Like it's a really high tech thing, because filtering Shanghai water. If you don't know about Shanghai water, it kills 99% of all germs. That sounds like a joke, but it's not. It's not potable. You don't drink it. It's for washing, and that's it. Man, it's filled with heavy metals and stuff that'll give you stomach cancer and liver cancer and stuff. So, yeah, you don't want to drink that. So, man. And, yeah, my student, he, again, after the lockdown, he was like, man, I never want you to go through that again. I'm going to buy this for you. So, man, I'm very grateful for that. So, shout out to Fang. Thank you, man. But that made me, that was a humbling experience. The idea that no matter how tough you think you are, you're not tough without water. No matter how intense your training is, it's not intense without water. No matter how big and strong you are not strong without water. And no matter how much you want to get out there and train, you can't get out there and train without water. And man, they were just building up all these prison camps, all these concentration camps all over the place, man. It was insane, and they were just locking people up for next to no reason. Like, oh, you were in a apartment complex next to an apartment complex where somebody had a close contact with somebody who allegedly had COVID, and so everybody, all 10,000 of you, get shipped off. Man, I lost a lot of weight at that time, not the good kind of weight loss. Because, man, my attempts at athleticism throughout my life have been a struggle to put on weight, to put on size, to manage to eat enough, to bulk up, etc. And, man, not the good kind of weight loss, guys. And then, when the lockdowns were finally lifted, all of us got COVID. And how, man? It almost killed me. Almost killed me. And I was bedridden for months. And even when I was able to get up and walk around, I could like walk around for like a couple minutes, and then that was it for the day. That was it. I could do like one minor athletic thing, and that was it, man. Then Rokas invites me to go to this self-defense thing in Australia, and And I was about to tell him no because, like, I was not in a physical condition to do that. Again, it was difficult enough to stand up and walk for half a minute. And in a great twist of irony, Rokus is going through the exact same thing right now. Keep him in your thoughts and prayers, friends. Because, man, I know what that's like, and it's rough. I almost died, man. I've been knocked out more times in my life than I would care to admit. And one of those times, the worst knockout was from COVID. I got up to go to the bathroom, fell unconscious. It was like getting clipped on the jaw, man. And I went down. I fell through my shower in the bathroom. It's a glass wall. Fell through this glass wall. Broke. While I'm unconscious, the fall, the glass cut my leg. I was bleeding. Concussed. Man, that was rough, man. Aphid Bowler says he knows a lot of people who were killed by ventilators. I know such a man. I know a guy who was killed by a ventilator. He got COVID pretty early on. Guy used to live here in Shanghai, went to my church. Yeah, man, it's funny because, like, COVID is one of those things we talked about too much, but we didn't talk about it. You know, we talked about the politics surrounding it. So anyway, so I'm recovering from COVID, and I go out to Australia and I do this self-defense thing, and it's and my knee gets crippled, man, crippled. My ligaments are torn, my ligaments are destroyed, cartilage is destroyed, man. So, how long has it been? It's like the better part of 2 years. It's been rough, and one of my gyms closed down. Then another one of my gyms closed down, and my other gym had to downsize. It's been rough, man. It's been really rough. Jim TC says you weren't allowed to talk about it. YouTube didn't allow me to broadcast that to you, as much as I tried. Once again, we're not talking about Chinese censorship. We're talking about YouTube. You talk about China on YouTube in the last 2 years, man, you're on a blacklist, more or less. Unless it's anti-Chinese propaganda. In the Spirit says, glad you're still going, man. Thank you. Global Product and Gaming Review says, how much would someone have to pay me to do an MMA conference in the U.S.? Man, I was in the U.S. this last summer, and I tried to set up seminars over there. I ended up doing a seminar for free over at the University of Southern California. And, no, not, hold on, I'm blanking on the correct name of the university, one of those universities in Los Angeles. I did a university for free there. Sorry, I did a seminar there for free. But, yeah, a lot of the folks I had previously talked to about setting up seminars before I went to the U.S., once I got there, were like, well, actually, never mind. So, if you want to pay for me to go do a seminar in the U.S., anywhere in the world, let me know. email me. Email me at ramseydewey@gmail.com. We'll work something out. We will work something out. I'm interested in doing that. Global Product and Gaming Review says, how would you respond if a 5-year-old kid says he could teach you something about martial arts? My kids said that to me all the time when they were little. This reminds me of a story. My youngest daughter, Ivy, when she was very little, she became enamored with ballet. And I was a professional ballet dancer, and I told her as much. I said, oh, cool, I can teach you ballet. Oh, no, you can't, Daddy. You don't know how to do it. This is how you do it. Let me show you. And then she does some crazy movement, which is not in the syllabus of movement of ballet. And of course, it was hilarious. It was funny. It was adorable. You can learn a lot from kids, but it's not necessarily what the kids want to teach you that you are learning. Unless a man become as one of these small children, he can in no wise inherit the kingdom of heaven. That's an important lesson we can learn from a 5-year-old. All right, guys, I'm going to hang up. Once again, if anybody is interested in hosting a seminar anywhere in the world, let me know. Let me know. Email me at ramseydewey@gmail.com. We'll set it up. Oh, we got one more super chat from Aphid Bowler. This is going to be the last one. Could Brian Shaw beat Francis Ngannou in a fight? Can Brian Shaw fight? Oh, wait, actually, I think he's training to fight right now. I saw some of his bag work. Something about those dudes who are that big. They have very awkward arm movement. Like, I remember looking at Brian Shaw's movement, and his arm movement is so weird specifically because of the size and shapes of his arms. Now, back in olden times, people would say, oh, weightlifting, you shouldn't do that if you're a fighter because you'll get muscle bound. And for most people, that's not really a thing. For Brian Shaw, on the other hand, I think you could actually use the term muscle bound to describe his weird arm movement. Now, that's not to say that he wouldn't be a dangerous man in a fight, because he's huge and he's a phenomenal athlete and he's super strong. And even if he's throwing a bad punch, you don't want to get hit with mitts that big, man. Could he beat Francis Ngannou in a fight? I would say probably not at this point. Later on, if he persists in training in mixed martial arts and he takes it very seriously, could it happen? Maybe. But at this point in time, I don't think so. But props to Brian Shaw for training in mixed martial arts, for doing that thing, for taking up a new challenge. That's awesome. I think he should have appropriately experienced competition. Don't throw him in with the wolves right away. Whenever you have like a big name in a different sport, they always seem to want to match him up against the champion of mixed martial arts or the champion of boxing. Why, man? It's weird. Like, yeah, I know, like, Francis Ngannou did pretty well when he fought Tyson Fury. You know, he didn't win the decision, but, you know, he won the hearts of the audience for the most part. He did really well, way better than we thought he would. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, I understand the marketing behind it, but why do we always do that thing where we take the champion of one combat sport or one physical culture sport and throw him against the champion of another? Doesn't really make sense to me. It's kind of irresponsible, kind of dangerous. I think we should probably stop doing that and start getting excited about different things besides freak show fights. All right, guys. That's it for me. Thank you for watching. Now get out there and train.